Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paranormal Pop Culture Hour. I am Aaron Sagers. I'm going to be your host once again. And in case you don't know me, I'm a journalist with a specialty focus on the entertainment of the unexplained, hence paranormal pop culture, and currently appearing on travel channels, Paranormal Caught on Camera. And yeah, we've been doing this every Wednesday right around the 5 o'clock hour. But of course, we will. This stays live, so even if it's not 5 o'clock wherever you are, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, I guess. So, and we'll get to that shortly because we actually have some cocktails going today as well. And yeah, like I said, every Wednesday we've been doing this throughout the Halloween season. We're going to be doing this right on through October, unless you guys like it so much that you say we need to keep going, and then we will, because we like to listen to the people. So I want to introduce this guest. I'm very excited to have her joining me today. Amy Bruni has been interested in the paranormal since she was a kid, when she was growing up in a haunted house. And then for 13 years, it has actually been her job to investigate the paranormal as a professional paranormal investigator, also known as a ghost hunter. And she was actually first seen on the show Ghost Hunters, and then Kindred Spirits, where she serves as not only the host, but also the boss as an executive producer. And she does that alongside Adam Berry. And that show also stars Chip Coffey, psychic medium. And she is also the owner of the paranormal tourism company Strange Escapes, and is now, because that's not all enough on its own, is now the author of the new book, Life with the Afterlife, 13 Truths I Learned from the Paranormal, or about ghosts. Sorry, I got that title wrong. 13 Truths I Learned About Ghosts. That's what happens when I'm actually trying to read the title card. And that is published by Grand Central Publishing. This is part memoir, part advice, and really a lot of pontifications about the paranormal. And it is available October 27th, so right in time for Halloween. And also, I have to say, for 10 years, I've been fortunate to call Amy a friend and have been lucky to join her on some Strange Escapes events. And I personally am excited for those to come back when everything returns to some sort of normalcy, or the new normal, or whatever it's going to be. And one more thing before I bring Amy in, we're excited to have her. One more thing is that we're going to be giving away 2 advanced copies of Life with the Afterlife. To be considered, this is what you have to do. Pay attention. And also give a follow on Twitter at Den of Geek US. And then when it's time to submit a response to the questions I ask, tweet Den of Geek US and tag hashtag paranormal pop culture. And hey, say hi to me as well. I'm there at Aaron Sagers. So without further ado, and let me just go ahead and show what Life with the Afterlife looks like. This is the book cover that we're going to be talking about today. And without further ado, let me bring her into the talk. Amy Bruni. Amy Bruni, you're with us today.
Here I am. Hi. It's working.
Hey. Yeah. I apologize. I knew the subtitle was 13 Truths About, and then I'm like, wait, is it ghost? Is it paranormal? Is it? And then I had to get there. I had to double check.
I still have to look at it because we went back and forth with so many titles that I was like, every once in a while I catch myself and I go, I'm going to double check and make sure I have it right.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you as the author still have to check, then I feel a little bit better about it.
You're good.
And what's really interesting about the book, as I mentioned, it is part memoir, part advice guide. It's not a how-to book about investigating, and instead it's really your thoughts, your philosophies. And it also includes a lot of notable names in the paranormal and recollections from your own investigations. And how did you land on sort of that approach? Because I think a lot of people would assume that either it's going to be straight memoir, this is how I got here, or a XYZ ABCs of the paranormal and how to do the job.
Right. Well, I think I felt like it was important to kind of explain how I arrived at these decisions. And a big part of that was experiences, but also just people who I surround myself with in the paranormal field. And, you know, as I say in the book, like it really did take a paranormal village. And there are just some people who I've become extraordinarily close to and whose ideas and theories and philosophies I really respect and I have incorporated into, you know, my theories. And so I didn't feel right just spouting, you know, all my thoughts on this without, you know, getting them involved in some way. So it's very interview heavy. It's very reflective. But it's a lot of fun. You know, we get to go through some experiences and people will hear from a lot of my friends and other very familiar folks in the paranormal. So it's fun.
Yeah. And it's certainly, I think, something that I think, highlight effectively is, and something I think that a lot of the folks that have been working in this world for a long time is that it's not rule based, that it's not strict sets of rules about the paranormal. And I think that people expect that when you're on TV and you've been doing it so long that Amy Bruni is operating with a set of rules, but that's not really the case, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, my theories are so in flux just based on what I've seen and experienced over the years. And, you know, the reality is we're looking for something that is virtually unprovable. And so it's very heavy. It heavily relies on your belief system. And, you know, your belief system changes over time. And so I always tell people that when it comes to the paranormal, anyone who speaks in absolutes, you know, that's a tough pill for me to swallow, because I feel like if you start presenting this as though you are the end all expert and you know exactly what all of this is, then, you know, you're fooling yourself, because, you know, it doesn't really follow any one path. Like there's so much about it that doesn't make sense. And so I always tell people, pretty much what I know for sure is weird stuff happens. And that's what I know.
And we lost you just a little bit for a second there, but I'm gonna go ahead and blame ghosts. That's the go-to anytime there's a signal disruption. We'll just say it's spirits. You know, what in your approach, what have been sort of the biggest evolution or leaps forward that in the, let's say, 13 years that you have been doing this professionally, what has been the biggest thing that has changed for you personally, philosophically?
I would say that the biggest thing has been moving from the idea that ghosts are like a novelty to realizing that they very well could be people like you and me. And, you know, I think that me, like many others who get into the paranormal, you know, we walk into these potentially haunted places and we're looking. We want an adrenaline rush. And it started dawning on me over the years of investigating that the two most common EVPs we get when we investigate are get out and help me. And I thought, what if I was actually a person and I was stuck in some place or I needed something done and people kept coming in and, you know, telling me to light up their gadgets and stuff. And I'm like, help me. And then they just walk out, like scream and run away and walk out. Like, what is that? You know, and so as soon as I kind of started looking at them, like, what if these are really people and they need something? It really changed my entire perspective on the paranormal.
Well, before we get too much deeper into it, I did say there would be cocktails involved, and I did want to just cheers you and do it in a very special mug.
Yes, cheers.
It's the Hatbox Ghost Haunted Mansion Tiki mug. So
good. I think you and I enjoyed a drink at the Trader Sam's.
Yeah, the grog grotto.
Yes. And I think I held a Hatbox Ghost mug in my hand that night.
I think so. Did you not go home with one? How did that happen?
It wasn't. There was only one there. It was a display. They had a new glass, but it was like a zombie one or something. If it had been a Hatbox Ghost, I would have grabbed it. You really put in perspective for me that like tiki mug collecting was even a thing, and I was like, I cannot get into this because I already have haunted dolls all over my house. I don't need tiki.
Yeah, And it's funny because I got a series of texts exchanged with Dustin Perry today talking about tiki and haunted stuff. So it's
Yes.
a weird crossover. But for the book, when you kind of get used to, in some ways, even though it's constantly changing, you know what it's like to approach the paranormal. But when you're writing a book, it's a whole new set of rules. So when you were sitting down to write, well, actually, did you sit down to write, and did you have all of these ideas in mind, scribbled about throughout the years, or was it like you were saying, okay, now I have to write a book? How did this come about?
Well, okay, so my friend Julie was instrumental in making this happen. I can't remember if you've met her or not, Julie Tremaine. She's a fabulous writer, and she and I connected years ago and just really hit it off. And she really persuaded me. She was like, "You have to do this. I will help you. Like, we have to make this happen. You have too many stories." And so she, like, together, we really just outlined the whole thing and figured out what our rules were going to be and what I felt was important. And then it was this whole entire interview process that happened. And so she was instrumental. Like, I could not have done it without her.
Now, I'm kind of curious because on Kindred Spirits you're an executive producer as well. And that's interesting because so many people for so long were not able to produce their own shows in paranormal reality TV. How has that role changed your perspective either on the paranormal, on your approach to investigation, and maybe even just how you navigate work in the real life?
Well, what it showed me was that anything can be done. For Adam and me, it was hugely important that, like, we wanted to be on TV again only in the circumstance that we could maintain our integrity, which is hard to do in paranormal reality television. And I think a lot of people are succeeding in doing it because I think that networks are realizing that viewers want to watch people that they can believe and trust in. But I think when we first entered into that arena, it was a little harder. But that was really, that was kind of our motivator, was like, I know we have to get this done, but also maintain our integrity. I never, want to look at my daughter and be like, "Mommy lied to be on TV" or anything like that. I always want her to know, like, everything I've done has been on the up and up. And so being an executive producer was essential to that because we have final say on everything. And Travel Channel has just been amazing to work with. And I mean, the work and behind the scenes stuff that goes into every single episode to make sure that everything is told accurately and that, people understand our motivations and the why. I mean, it's huge. So we could totally phone it in, but we don't. And especially being executive producers, it's been really important to making Kindred Spirits what it is.
And you also, the book itself has chapter names such as "You're Not Crossing Anyone Over," "There's No Such Thing as a Ghost Detector," and along with maintaining your integrity as a producer, when you write this book, you're going to potentially ruffle some feathers in the paranormal world and amongst your own fan base. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about why you felt it was important to include these, even though they might stir up a little bit of controversy.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the chapter names are attention grabbers, and I think that it's kind of the equivalent of reading the headline and not the article. And so I think that it's important that people take the chapter headline, the chapter names with a grain of salt, because we do go into very in-depth reasoning behind each of those. And so I'm open to conversation on any of those. But I fully believe that anyone who watches Kindred Spirits or anyone with an interest in the paranormal, I think they're going to read those and they're going to be like, "Oh yeah, like, this makes sense." And honestly, if they don't think it makes sense, that's fine too. Like, that, that's a big theme in the book, is I can tell you things all day long, but it's important that you really come up with your own ideas and theories as well. So I had a lot of fun with those chapter titles. But yeah, I do expect if people do see those and don't read the chapter, I'm sure I'll get some emails.
Well, yeah, and that includes one of the chapter titles is, I think at the end, it's not a spoiler, but don't believe anything I just told you.
Exactly.
So the are just out of curiosity, do you have kind of pet peeves of investigations that you see out there? Because I have a fair share of them when I see folks out there that, I don't know. I think a lot of times it's when people act like they are the authority, the end all be all of the rules of the paranormal. But do you have any other pet peeves of paranormal investigations that you see out there?
I mean, I think that would be one of my biggest for sure. I do think sometimes when we're investigating, especially in group situations, there are some people that tend to make the investigation all about them. And, there's always, we always, at the events, as you've been to many strange escapes, we always give that little speech in the beginning that's like, don't be that person that, has everything happen to them and makes, is constantly being touched and pushed and scratched. And, so that can be a lot. But so I think that it's kind of, people want sometimes ghosts to pay attention to them. And so they start reading a lot into it. So I think that, and like confirmation bias in general, is a really big pet peeve of mine, is that people want to have something happen so badly that they will kind of, give up on looking at other options. And so that's a big one.
You have multiple moments throughout the book, and one of them that I think I was actually with you on was at the Otasaga Hotel. You mentioned an experience, and there was also, was that the place where Ouija board expert Bob Murch was in the room and the drapes snapped up? Was that the same event, perhaps?
Probably. It was a very eventful weekend.
Yeah. So because of all of the activity that you've experienced at multiple locations, how did you narrow it down as far as what you did want to include? Because you only have, I mean, hopefully there's going to be a volume 2, maybe 13 more things that you've learned. But how did you narrow down the experiences that you really wanted to include in there?
It was hard. We had a lot. And so we tried to pick, obviously we go back into a lot of experiences in each chapter, but then also at the end of each chapter, there's like a little story, like a little throwback to something that I experienced. And so there's 13 of those, obviously, and then there's stories within the chapters. And it was hard. And sometimes, we would be completely done with a chapter or even done with the book, and I would be like, oh my gosh, there was that one thing I totally forgot happened, because I've had so many experiences. So there were definitely moments where we went back and added things or changed what we had put in there. My daughter's doing karate, and I don't know, but you could probably see her. Like, I know we're like, she's like jumping up and down.
I occasionally see like just a high kick going across the screen.
There's a Zoom karate class in the background. Yeah. So it's called working at home, multitasking.
If you're not watching Cobra Kai, you need to be watching that.
Oh, I'm definitely watching that. It's not kid friendly, but we're definitely watching.
Well, I think that it's worth noting that something that I've always been impressed with you about is the fact that this is a very male-dominated industry. The entertainment industry of involving the paranormal reality shows, it's dominated by straight white dudes. And that has changed. And Kindred Spirits, I think, is notable because it's led by a woman. It's led by a gay man. It has another gay man as a co-star on it. So it has gotten better. But how has the experience been for you being involved in this genre for so long as a woman when there was only basically you, Chris Williams, not that many women out there in this TV field?
Well, I mean, there was a lot. It was a very different world when I first started in the paranormal field, and I mean, and especially on television. Like, I'll just say, there's a lot of paranormal people out there that are glad that none of us have pursued the Me Too movement. Oh, wow. It was not easy, and but we persevered and stuck with it. And like what I've always said is that I've always said that the paranormal field, when you get out to an event, as you've seen, when you get out to like a paranormal conference, it is overwhelmingly women. It's a very feminine driven field. I would say probably 75% of our attendees. So it was always weird for me that the TV portion of it was so male dominated. But I feel like it kind of, I think that once, you know, TV started seeing and executives started seeing those numbers and seeing who watched, and they weren't watching because they wanted to see like, you know, some attractive man investigating. They wanted to see women like them, like kicking butt and looking for ghosts. And so they started casting a lot more female investigators. And so, you know, I think we've come a long, long way. And I'm definitely glad that I stuck it out because, you know, I came from like a executive background, and there were multiple times where I was like, you know, I'm gonna go back to the cubicle. I don't know if I can do this anymore. But it's been incredibly rewarding to watch how it's evolved.
Do you think that inclusivity actually yields better paranormal evidence?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for sure, you know, I think that there are, you know, I think there are natural differences between, you know, everyone who investigates personality-wise, you know, and I think that the more people you have involved, the better. And, you know, different viewpoints, different lifestyles, like it all helps because you never know who's going to be that person who relates to the ghost in the room. You know, I always kind of compare it to walking into a party and not knowing anybody. And, you know, I always tell people, don't walk in all doom and gloom, walk in smiling and say hello. And the more people that you have, you know, the more diversity you have, someone will connect with that ghost and get a response that's hopefully not get out or help me.
One of the chapters that you have in the book is, if ghosts are real, Bigfoot is probably real too. And I think that was a really great inclusion because it's weird. I think this may just be human nature that we try to apply rules to things, even if it's things we don't understand. And sometimes that leads to, in paranormal circles, saying, yeah, ghosts are real, but Bigfoot, nah, no aliens. And then even like, yeah, elementals or fairies or gnomes, nah, like, and people work in absolutes. Why? So talk a little bit about why you went there with this chapter, because again, I think it'd be so easy just to only focus on, here's the ghost and this is my lane and that's where I'm going to stay.
Yeah, well, honestly, it was something I noticed like a long time ago, that sometimes when I heard from abductees, people who felt as though they had been abducted by aliens, or had seen an alien, there were a lot of commonalities between those witness reports and a paranormal experience where someone thought they saw a ghost. And then really, it was talking to John Tenney, who's a paranormal researcher and one of my dear friends, when he kind of put it into perspective for me. Well, like, honestly, okay, you can't sit there. It's kind of like with psychics. Like, people who believe in the idea of ghosts, but then don't believe in the idea of a psychic. I'm like, how come one is so much more believable than the other to you? And so it was kind of along those lines with the idea of like Bigfoot or you know, crypto moments or aliens. And then he brought up this thing that blew my mind. He was like, what if Bigfoot is the ghost of Neanderthals, and what if the Loch Ness Monster is a ghost of a dinosaur? And I was like, you know, what if? And so that kind of, I love that point, but also the idea that like you can be so open-minded about something that's so hard to believe, but then instantly just kind of, you know, put off the idea of another. So I think it all warrants study and investigation. You have a lot of people who swear that they've had these experiences or seen these things. And I mean, at this point, you cannot argue that aliens exist and UFOs exist. So I think, but yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
I mean, that's certainly, yeah, that's John Tenney for you guys. Definitely there with the mind-blowing comments. I kind of observed that since this genre really entered into its current phase in that 2004, 2005 era, there seems to be a little bit more expanded horizons taking place. And I would almost attribute part of that to paranormal events where there's just been this crossing the streams, if you will,
Mhm.
of just a lot of people mixing and talking about their different fascinations and their belief systems. You worked on an event company before Strange Escapes, and of course there is now Strange Escapes. How much do you think that these paranormal events really have contributed to the expansion of theories and philosophies?
I think they've been huge because I think what's happened is you actually get people in a room that like their background might not be something you would think would be associated with something paranormal, but suddenly their interest is piqued and they start kind of applying what their expertise is into the paranormal field. And the result of that is like more technology, more theories, more kind of scientific studies into it. So I think that's been great. And then you also get all these people who it is their like life's work. They're all in the same room talking about it, you know, having late night drinks in the lobby, like talking about crazy theories, and so much comes from it. I know Strange Escapes in particular, people really started playing with the ideas, not playing, I shouldn't say playing, but doing a lot of experiments with like intention and ritual work and things like, because we had a large group of people, so why don't we try it out? And the fact that everyone was so willing to kind of partake in that thing, in that sort of thing, has always just been really fascinating to me. And I don't think we would have ever gotten opportunities to try experiments like that if we did not have these types of events. And by the way, I miss them like crazy. Like this has been really hard. So.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's been weird. I personally haven't been on an airplane since I think right at the in February, and
Mhm.
you know me, like I'm at so many Comic Cons and events and whatnot. It's weird not really traveling right now.
It's crazy. We flew to California to see my family, and it was a very strange experience. But that's the only time I've flown since February.
Yeah. Well, when you work in the public eye, when you're on TV, regardless of your job, I mean, you could be a pastry chef and or you could be a journalist or whatever it might be. But when you're doing something on TV, people do make certain assumptions about the job, about how it works, and a lot of times those assumptions are wrong and they get it wrong about what you do. What are some of the misconceptions and assumptions that you are frequently having to battle, that people kind of get wrong about either the 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 investigative part, the nuts and bolts of that, or just about the actual production part of things?
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think that for people who have not seen the show, or like they just meet me at a dinner party or something and they find out what I do, they always just assume that we just fake everything and that it's all fake. And I'm like, no, it's real. Everything is real. And then for people who, you know, in the paranormal field, you know, I would say that I think sometimes we're like defending like the production aspect of it, and we're like, no, like we're on the level, like, you know. And so it's kind of the same, it's the same thing, but it almost it's a little different coming from people who are actually in the field. Charlotte is all in on the karate right now.
I want to point out that I think she's winning. Like whoever she is sparring against, she is winning. If you guys are tuning in late, Amy's daughter is having a Zoom karate class as we're also talking about ghosts, which
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not paranormal, but it's definitely interesting.
I'm so sorry.
No. Well, I mean, okay, so there is a question that somebody
test, so it's a big deal today. So they're all in.
Look, this is just the new world. This is the world we live in right now. It's okay. I think
it's true. It's true.
And one of the folks in the room in the audience wants to know about Strange Escapes events, and I want you to talk about that. But as a business owner, you obviously have to think about the safety. You have to think about, people coming in. There's a lot of considerations. So as a business owner, when do you think it is safe to go back to events and these public investigations, which are, it's difficult at times to even social distance in those situations. So what are some of the things you're thinking about?
Okay, so we're hopeful that we can get back to this in the spring of 2021. And so, so we have our, I don't know how long this Zoom class is going to be, but so we have our.
You could just blame it on a ghost right now.
There's a karate ghost in the background.
Karate ghost,
I guess there could be worse things. So as far as rescheduling, we're looking at spring. We do have one for December in Missouri, but that's a smaller event in a very large place. And so we've already kind of figured that the worst case scenario there is that we're going to have people in, little groups. Obviously they investigate in a small group, and then they'll be in their small groups during the talk so we can spread everybody out. So that'll be different. But right now we've reached out to everyone who had tickets for events for 2020 and gave them first dibs on the upcoming events. And then we're going to release those events to the public in the next couple weeks. So, but I think like the larger scale events, like the cruise and stuff, will be next summer. And I think our first big event is, I think, March or April. So we're hopeful, but I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, you have been able to film, we have this Ghost Nation special coming up in October, the Ghost Nation Reunion in Hell, which is a crossover with some of your colleagues from Ghost Hunters, and that's going to be airing on October 31st. It's a 2-hour crossover special. You, Adam, Steve Gonzalez, Dave Tango, and Jason Hawes. So you were able to that's not live, right? That's pre-taped, correct?
Yes. So we've been filming. We filmed that. We filmed other things, and so
I didn't say anything.
Our crew's small enough that we've been able to make it happen. It involves a lot. I'm trying to slyly wink, but I'm not good at winking. So, anyways, you'll see a lot more of us in 2021. But we've been filming, and it's been a process of COVID testing. Like even like right before I got on here, I had to give myself a COVID test and send it off in FedEx. So it's a lot of testing and wearing masks and keeping the crew small and social distancing. And so far, it has worked. Temperature checks nonstop. So.
Well, the thing that I was kind of curious about, and this has been a popular topic amongst paranormal circles right now, and obviously nobody knows for certain, but do you personally think that this pandemic time, obviously tragic, very, it's very heavy, a lot of gravity associated with it, and I don't want to make light of it, but do you personally think that it has impacted paranormal activity? Have you noticed that even with your investigations that you have been able to conduct recently?
Yes, and it's maybe not how you would expect. It has changed it in the sense that if you think of spirits as having personalities, they came to, think of how this has affected us. We've gone from, like you and I, we travel nonstop. We go out to dinner. We have tons of friends, and we're out and about a lot. And for us to suddenly just be home and not be doing anything was really hard, especially the first few months. Now think of these spirits, assuming they have the same kind of, mindset as us. They're in a situation where sometimes there's a place like a hotel or a bread and breakfast, or, and suddenly no one is there, and they've been used to having people there. Or maybe there's something about the pandemic that is triggering for them and reminds them of, we just did a case where we were investigating people who had died during the Spanish flu epidemic. And so this has been, kind of the activity has peaked because suddenly everybody's wearing masks again. So there are all of these really interesting moments that are kind of adding to activity, or, the idea that people are home more. And so they're just suddenly noticing that their house is haunted because it's the first time they've sat still. We're so busy. And so there's a lot of theories behind it, but it's a massive, like, energy shift, a massive spiritual moment, and it absolutely has affected paranormal activity.
And I will be getting to some audience questions momentarily. I do want to point out that someone said they feel like, it was Jesse Limecooler says that Charlotte should do a Zoom karate during all of the talks at Strange Escapes. And you know what? I co-sign on that. I think it should happen.
She would love to.
Well, with life, with the afterlife, even though it doesn't signal the end for you in this field by any stretch, one has to wonder, is there a moment where you've thought about where you can say to yourself, you know what? I'm done. I'm ready to close the book on my work in the paranormal. Maybe I'm going to retire. Have you thought about it? And what do you think that moment would be? What might lead to that retirement?
I don't know. Like, I have wondered that, but then I look at my friends who, have been doing this for a lot longer than I big names in the paranormal, like, John Zaffis and Chip and, like the late Rosemary Ellen Guiley, like they just kind of have stuck, they keep going. And I think I have that same mentality. Like, I don't see unless for some reason we figure it all out, and it's no longer this big mystery, but I just don't see myself leaving the field ever. I could see myself cutting way back, just kind of, maybe semi-retiring, but I realize fully, like, this is part of me for forever.
Yeah, it is an interesting question, because would you want the answer right now? If somebody could, if there either was a form that would come back from the other side, or another dimension, and they had the handbook for the recently deceased, or someone cracked the science of it and said, this is the deal, this is what is up with ghosts, case closed, would you want that? I mean, do you like the fact that the mystery continues?
There's so much about the paranormal that I love besides just pursuing that answer. I love the people, I love the events, I adore the historical aspect of it. I love, one of my favorite byproducts of what we do is that, sometimes bringing attention to a location or a historical space or a museum or something that was, on the verge of shuttering because they had no funds, suddenly people in the paranormal have taken an interest in it, and they're, revived and back alive, especially right now. And so there's I love those kind of byproducts of what we do. And so, no, I don't think I'd want to know, because then I have to give that up, I feel like, or it would lose its luster. So, there are some times where I think that I love the paranormal community more than I love the paranormal itself. Like, it's such a great group of truth seekers, and it's such a dynamic bunch. I love it.
So shifting gears a little bit, one of the chapters in your book is beware of hitchhiking ghosts. And, we started the talk by, some tiki mugs, some haunted mansion stuff. You're a big Disney nerd.
Yeah, you can probably see that in the book. There's a few very slick references.
Yeah. So, well, first off, how did you discover that part of your personality? Because I don't think you've always been a Disney nerd. So how did this happen?
Okay, so I was like, I was definitely that parent that was like, I'm never going to go to Disney. It's a commercial nightmare. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to feed into that consumer machine. And the first time I went to Disney, it was a disaster. And I was like, I'm never coming back here again. And so then I went again with Jesse Limecooler, who asked the question earlier. I went with his family. And they kind of showed me the ropes, and I was like, okay, I can get behind this a little bit more. And then I think it was one of the first times I saw Charlotte meet Mickey Mouse, and the look on her face. And I was like, oh, because I never went to Disney when I was a kid. I was one of 9 kids. We could never afford that. And I saw that moment, and I was like, oh, I get it. And it just became this really special place for Charlotte and me. And so that really is what happened. And I'd always been a Disney nerd as far as the movies went. I'd seen like every Disney movie. But then once I started getting into like, learning about the Imagineering side of it and the parks and like the history, there's just so much there. And so I get it. I totally get it now. And so I'm an unapologetic Disney nerd.
This is shameless plug, but you should definitely go back and look at the video we did with Jason Sorrell, who was, he was an Imagineer and also he worked for Universal, but he literally wrote the book about the Haunted Mansion, the history of the Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, I heard all about it. Jesse Lamkuehler was texting me during it. Jesse was, he messaged me that he bought the book by the end of the live stream. So I think that that's the sign of a successful interview. Who is your favorite Haunted Mansion ghost? I don't know. The Hatbox Ghost is pretty great. I can't. That's why I'm really jealous of your mug there.
We should. We'll have to figure out a way to get you one of the tiki mugs. But
I know.
But see, I grew up in Orlando, so we didn't have the Hatbox Ghost. So it was a bit of this. Yeah, it was like a bit of this like white whale until I could finally go to Anaheim and see it for myself.
Yeah.
So that was
the first Haunted Mansion I went to, because I went to Disney when I was like 20, Disneyland. I mean, it was fun, but it just didn't have the same, like when I saw it through the eyes of Charlotte, I was like, oh, it was a different world.
Well, and in the realm of pop culture, since we're already hanging out there a little bit, we got Disney, but I'm also curious about what scares you when it comes to horror movies or scary movies. What makes you jump?
Gosh. I am not a fan of like the horror genre at all. Like, and I am of like 70s and 80s, like horror movies clearly, but like, unless it's like a psychological thriller or something like The Haunting of Hill House, something like that I can get behind, but like, anything else is hard for me, especially anything gory. What really scared me? This karate moment. Still happening. What really scared me was the remember that movie? I can't remember the name of it, when they were like underground in the caves and the things were eating them or whatever. That was the most terrifying movie to me. I'm scared of being under. Yes, I'm terrified of being underground. Couple that with monsters, I was done.
I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that not quite a year ago, Amy worked on a virtual reality segment for the company Fandom, which I was producing, and was playing the Exorcist VR game. And having known Amy for many years, I've never seen this woman get so like startled and scream, visibly shaking with the VR. Walk us through it a little bit about that experience and what that felt like for you to play the Exorcist VR. And I'm not even trying to sell this game. I just think it's a hilarious story.
So here's the thing. Like, I don't like not being in control of any situation. And so I had never played a VR game before, so I had no idea what I was getting into. And in the game, you're in tunnels, which is my nightmare. And I'm like, you're like, pick up the thing and like throw the holy water. So I can barely operate this system because I'm not a gamer. And there's this like demon coming. If that happened to me in real life, I would be doomed. Like I'm clearly not cut out for being an exorcist.
It is worth. I don't even work for Fandom anymore, and it's worth going and looking at this video that we produced.
It was so funny, and that was so much fun. I had a blast. But yeah, I remember being like literally shaking. I remember, and I could see it in the game too. Your hands shaking in the game. I'm like, this is terrible. what kind of ghost hunter am I should have been fired that day.
Well, ghost hunter, but not demonologist, not exorcist.
Exactly.
It's like that. Those are the other folks that you can hire.
Yeah.
There is Jenny Stringer wants to know how your family responds to the investigating, the ghost hunting. I think it's especially interesting since now your daughter is old enough that she kind of gets what you do. But speak to that a little bit.
Okay, so Charlotte is, she just thinks it's cool, and so she's not gotten to the point where I'm an embarrassment yet, but I'm sure that's coming. But for right now, she thinks it's really neat, and she loves to like come on set, and she knows the whole crew, and she, we do have a funny story about this thing called the ghost bread. So if you watch Kindred Spirits, at some point in the episode, you will always see, okay, it's actually with the crew right now, but there's a loaf of bread, and it's not real. It's a staged loaf of bread, and it was at Maplecroft in Fall River, and Charlotte had come that night when we were filming there to have dinner with us, and I was not quite done with an interview, and so our director was trying to keep her quiet, and he said, Charlotte, go upstairs and see if you can find the ghost. Here, take this ghost bread. And so we're sitting there, we just hear her go upstairs, and you hear her little feet, and you hear her go, ghost, I have ghost bread. And so she left it, and then she comes downstairs, and she's like, I left the ghost bread up there. And so her other production manager went up the back staircase, grabbed the bread, brought it back down, and told her to go look for it and see if the ghost had gotten it. And she went up there and was like, oh my goodness, the ghost bread is gone, the ghost took it. And so anyways, now on every episode, the ghost bread travels with us, and it's a little Easter egg. You have to find the ghost bread. So,
is it in the background of every one shot of every Kindred Spirits episode?
The hint is it's always in our area with all of our equipment. So, like when we're doing like our down, like when we're like come back and we're like talking about what happened or whatever, it's usually somewhere in the background.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start looking for this. Yeah. What kind of bread is it? Is it whole
It's like a loaf of French bread, and so it really depends on the edit. Some of the episodes it doesn't make it on, but it's in quite a few of them. You have to really have a keen eye. It's in a lot of photos online too, so that's pretty funny. As far as Jimmy, her dad, he doesn't believe in ghosts at all, and so he thinks he's always like whatever pays the bills. So that there's a very interesting dynamic in our house, but I don't try to convince him, and we live in harmony.
I love that. We have a question from Monica that wants to know, do you think there's a form of activity everywhere? Basically, is everything haunted?
Uh-oh, you cut out for a second. Oh. Sorry.
The question was, is there a form of activity everywhere, and is everything kind of haunted?
Oh, no, I don't think everything is haunted. I definitely don't. I think I think there are quite a few haunted places depending on where you are. Like here in New England, I feel like there's a lot of really old buildings. There's a lot of history in them. And I think that there's a lot of buildings that have energy to them that might not necessarily be a haunting, depending on what took place there. Someone could have never died in a space, but it could still produce activity based on any sort of, high level emotional moments that happen there. But yeah, so I would say not everything is haunted, but also don't assume it's haunted. Sometimes a place that looks like it should be super haunted, there's nothing there. And sometimes you walk into a house that was built 3 weeks ago and is massively haunted. So you never know.
Yeah, there is this temptation, and I get it because it's fun, and it's also, part of, a tourism with some establishments that if they say it's the most haunted building in whatever city, that's good for business. But it's also, I always ask, like, well, did you get the ghost to fill out a census? Like, how did you determine this one? It's just like one of those little quirks of the paranormal world, I guess, right? Of the community.
Yeah. Yes. We go into places that I think sometimes commercialize their ghosts a bit, and I don't always fault them especially when I see places that have literally been saved by their haunting.
Well, and I think also, part of it is that you have to feel for businesses, because not too long ago, 15 years ago, it was not something that you would publicize that you were potentially haunted as an establishment. And now, if they can actually turn that into a bit of an opportunity to make money, then have at it, because it was actually costing them business for a very long time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I always point to some of the more historic locations. Some of them are still very reluctant to talk about their ghosts. But like you take a place like the Mark Twain house, and they incorporated a ghost tour one year and added $60,000 a year to their revenue just based on a ghost tour that they have a couple months out of the year in the fall. And that's a huge amount of money for some of these, these historical locations. And, it's not like they were making it up. Like, people have genuinely had experiences there for years. But instead of kind of, brushing it under the rug, they embraced it. And they brought in a whole new, set of eyes and people who never would have set foot in there. And I think I talk about it in the book too, about how like my dad would bring me to historical places, under the idea that they were haunted. So I would be interested in it. And it worked. And I plan to use the same method if Charlotte takes an interest in the ghost. So, we can't let history, I feel like, is going away. We're in such a connected age where we live in the moment, and anything that helps out these kind of struggling, I always go back again to historical societies, because I think those are on the out, and anything that gets people through those doors, that is legitimate, of course. Like, we don't want to start faking hauntings, but if you have a ghost and you have an attendance issue, consider adding a ghost tour or letting people come in to investigate.
Yeah, I recall back in the early days, it was Fort Mifflin, I believe, that after it had appeared on a episode of Ghost Hunters, and I think that was before you joined the show, but after it appeared on an episode of Ghost Hunters, this Revolutionary War fort that had great historic significance was about to close down. They didn't have the money to operate, and then suddenly, after being on a show, their attendance was up something like 90%, and then they were able to maintain business. We have another question who we are winding down, but this is an interesting question. Mary Grace Kirby says, have you ever had a hitchhiker come home, and what did your husband say about it? What did your partner say about it?
Well, so I've had it happen a few times, and there was one experience that got his attention, and he denies it to this day, but I have a good memory and text messages to prove it. So we were investigating in the old city jail in South Carolina, I think, and I was pregnant at the time, and it's kind of a long story, but basically I felt as though the spirit of a small child had followed me back home. And I was not sure. Like, I was there, and I had this experience where I felt something hugging my legs, like this little warm hug around my legs. And so I went home. I didn't really think about it. And my friend at the time was helping me with housekeeping, because I was, getting pregnant and just like traveling a bunch. And so she came up to me and she was like, Amy, is your house haunted? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. And she said, well, I saw a little shadow run down the hallway upstairs. And I was like, oh, actually, I take that back. Sorry, I saw the shadow first. So I was upstairs in my bathroom, and I was just like doing my hair, and I saw this little shadow run down the hallway past the door into what was going to be Charlotte's nursery. And I was like, oh, okay. I'd never seen anything in my house before. And so then a few days later, my friend came to me, and she pointed out that I had not told her about this experience. And she said that she had seen a small shadow run down the hallway, the exact same thing I had seen. And so I was like, okay, I think I really, have brought something home this time. But I didn't say anything to Jimmy, because he's a non-believer. And I went back to go film. And the next night I got a text from him, and it was like, did you bring something home with you? Because something just flew across the room up here. Like, something had been thrown across the bedroom while he was trying to sleep. And so that was the one time that he was like, did you bring something home with you? But he denies it to this day. So that was that was the closest I got.
Yeah, it's, there's the old expression, there's no atheists in foxholes, but I tend to think it's like there's no total cynics in a haunted house. Sooner
Yes.
or later, someone is going to be convinced somehow.
Yes.
And we are winding down, but I think it's worth asking this question of, I know that you approach the job quite seriously, and you do view the ghost, the spirits that you encounter with a lot of respect, but how do you balance that with also having fun in the paranormal, and why is it important to have fun with your paranormal investigations?
Well, I mean, I feel as though it's just like any personality trait. No one wants to hang out with someone who's not happy and smiling. If we approach the paranormal time and time again, all doom and gloom and death, and they're not going to interact with us that way. If you approach it from a human side, and like I said before, you walk in smiling and you're talking to your friends, and if you have your investigators in there and you guys are chatting back and forth, and it's clear that there's a rapport, and you make the environment comfortable, that lends to your investigation. I mean, obviously it can't be forced, but I always tell people, don't take yourself too seriously, because they can feel that. Like if you're uncomfortable and you're, overthinking it, they know, you don't, we can sense that in live people. So who's to say they can't tell that about us too? So I think it's always important to go in, casually. I mean, as long as the situation warrants it, of course.
Yeah. And, the book is, of course, let's see if we can get the image up here of that. Oh, nope. Okay. It's just blocking our faces, but that's okay. But the book is Life with the Afterlife, 13 Truths I Learned About Ghosts. It is coming out on October 27th. And I did promise that we were going to be giving away 2 copies of the book. And the way you get considered for that is follow at Den of Geek US on Twitter, tweet the answer at Den of Geek US, and tag #Paranormal Pop Culture. So throughout the course of this conversation, talking with the excellent Amy Bruni, we did cover multiple chapter titles. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask you to tweet one of the chapter titles of Life with the Afterlife. So you know what to do. Head on to Twitter, and I think we covered at least 4 or 5 of those chapter titles. You only have to tweet one of them. Mm-hmm. And the first one that we see that does it, you're gonna be the first person that receives a book, and then the next person will be the next person that receives a book, and then we'll contact you with all the details and everything. But we're not revealing that answer right now, because as it is, there's a lot of technology to manage at this moment. I can't take on another one. But Amy, you are awesome. You, like I said, it's been such a long time knowing you. It's been a great ride, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon, perhaps over a tiki drink or at a haunted location or something. I know. Yes, so let's make it happen. And also, we're still waiting to find out about more Kindred Spirits, but I think I've got a pretty good feeling about that. And in the meanwhile, Life with the Afterlife is coming out October 27th, and then on October 31st, you can see Amy Bruni and Adam Berry of Kindred Spirits on a very special episode of Ghost Nation on Travel Channel. And she's on social media, and her daughter is occasionally in the background doing karate Zoom classes.
Yes, thank you.
So, Amy, I'm going to let you get out of here, and then I'm going to have a chat with the folks that are still here. But thank you so much for joining, and happy Halloween, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks everybody. You can pre-order the book too. The more pre-orders, the better. So thank you.
Oh yeah, pre-order it, and it's published by Grand Central Publishing. Get out there, get those books going. All right, Amy.
Thank you.
Bye. And guys, thank you for joining the Paranormal Pop Culture Hour with me, Aaron Sagers. I appreciate you being here. we're going to be doing this again. We're going to be doing it every Wednesday until Halloween at least, and then maybe more if you guys keep tuning in. We're going to be talking to folks about UFOs, aliens, cryptids. We're going to be talking to some actors. There's going to be all sorts of folks that are going to be joining us. So keep an eye out for more episodes on the way. And again, big thanks to Amy Bruni. Get out there, get that book, pre-order, and then actually that's the best way to go anymore. Like, you know, I love going to bookstores, but right now during this crazy isolation pandemic time, pre-order it so then you have it on your Kindle or you've got it delivered straight to your doorstep and you don't have to go out. Instead, you can hunker down and read the book. So check that out. All right, we are at an end. I will see you soon. In the meanwhile, you can also say hi on social media. So happy Halloween, guys, and thanks for joining the Paranormal Pop Culture Hour.